Hi everyone, I'm Alexa G, and I'm here to talk to you guys on the Props Network about UFC 257. I'm so excited about it. It's a really highly anticipated match. The last time McGregor and Poirier played each other was 6 years ago. So I need some help because I've been into UFC for a while, but I want to start betting on it. So I need some more information. I want to talk to Diego Lopez, MMA trainer and stand-up comedian. We're going to talk a little bit about UFC 257, the match coming up. And then I'm going to get some help from Joel Wachowski, our in-house gambling expert, gambling professional. And he's going to help me figure out how to place the bet that I want to place this weekend for UFC 257. So I'd love to start with Diego Lopez so we can start talking about this really anticipated match and I can get some feedback from an MMA trainer and expert in that field. Hi, Diego.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, I'm so happy to have you, and I hope that the stand-up comedian maybe comes out a little bit. We can make some fun here while learning how to bet on this weekend's big matchup. So why don't we start by discussing
how— I can think of a joke while talking about fighting.
Yes, let's see. So I don't think I'm the comedian here, but I am the sports aficionado. I've loved UFC forever. And I'm really, really excited about this. I mean, I watched their match 6 years ago. So I remember that. It was super quick. What, 1 minute and 46 seconds he got knocked out?
Yeah. Quick fight.
I mean, I personally think that
the kind of thing where it was a heated fight. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say that you go first. I was going to say there's a lot of difference of how they came into that one and how they're coming into this one. So I want to know your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're completely different fighters at this point. It was at that time these two guys at the pinnacle of the sport, but also they were not as tested as they are now in terms of the eyes on them. It's interesting to me to see how the fight that they've had together has changed them, whereas sometimes getting beaten, having a chance to fight that person again can be very helpful in your training for it, but other times winning a fight can get you a little bit complacent in your training to fight that same person again. So it's going to be interesting to see how they have dealt with that past success or failure against each other and seeing how they can deal with it in this next fight coming up. They've both had a very interesting road from that fight to this fight. So it's going to be fun to see, how their confidence is going to affect that, because it's been very different since those 6 years.
I do really want to talk about that confidence. First, I just want to bring in Joel Wachowski, the in-house professional gambler, expert on gambling, because as we discuss these differences from the last fight and coming up, I kind of want his opinion too, eventually, on how that would, affect the bet that I want to make. So I saw the confidence from the first match. McGregor was obviously really able to get into his head.
Oh, hello. How are we? Alexa G. I'm Joel. Happy to be on the stream. Couldn't be more stoked for UFC 257. As a New Yorker, I couldn't be more stoked because if I want to bet on human combat, usually I have to visit the back of a bodega. So let's go Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. Well, apparently we don't have to do that anymore. I don't have so much information on that. That's why I'm so happy that you're here, Joel. And also, like I was just saying with Diego, there are a lot of different factors that I want your opinion on it. I'm confused about in ultimately placing the bet, because what we were just saying is last time McGregor was really able to get into his head. He was doing a lot of talk, and I think Poirier, like Diego just said, they've grown a lot, right? There's a lot of differences in their personality and the way they're handling this coming into this. And I just wonder, not just how that's going to affect the matchup, but how that actually affects the ultimate bet that we want to place.
And, you have to look at the images these guys are presenting to the world as you prepare to wager on this fight at a legal sports book, not one of the aforementioned back of the bodegas. But that being said, I am off of McGregor here. I saw him showing off $1 million timepiece. And if this is combat, if this is the sport of kings, maximizing your both physical and mental abilities, I want the guy who hasn't yet put on that $1 million watch looking like a steampunk version of some Wild Wild West prop.
By the way, to whoever's watching, if you haven't seen the timepiece he's talking about, it's pretty insane, and I highly recommend looking it up because that watch is something like I've never seen before.
And to be fair, I might just be biased against the watch because I do not know how to tell time.
Oh, so you're the comedian now. Diego, what's going on here?
Well, no, I do stand up. I know Diego from way back in the day. Did you know we were friends? I've attended one UFC training session with this man, and it was the unstoppable force meets the invisible object.
So Diego, what do you think about, like we were saying, the difference of how Poirier is coming in and how they're starting this time around?
Yeah, I just think Poirier is so much more of a complete fighter this time. He's so much more of an adult man this time, where Conor got in his head the last time. He got emotional last time. He let the moment get the better of him. For people that have never fought, and I never fought at that stage, the things surrounding the fight can be really, really exhausting and can take a toll on you mentally and physically. Doing all the pre-fight interviews, all the media stuff, the photo shoots, the videos, all of that stuff can take away your focus and take away your attention from the fight itself. So it's like we as fans don't get to see all of that. And then the what you see in the cage isn't necessarily their 100%. And that's obviously what's so impressive about fighting, is that when you watch them fight, they're not at their best. They're kind of just doing the best that they can for that given moment. But I think Poirier at this time, he's just so much more confident. He's been in some wars. He knows he's at the top of the game right now. It's going to be really fun to watch him kind of show that off this time.
Right. And, last time, obviously, all of what you just said did affect him. And even McGregor said that, a featherweight doesn't know the punch or his hit of a lightweight. And now that they're at the same weight, I mean, they're both known for their hard strikes, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that, and that's something that I also want to ask Joel's opinion on, they're both known for their power, right? Those are both of their strengths, Poirier but now they're at the same weight. So do you think the power that Poirier can now bring is going to be, more significant than last time?
Yeah, because I mean they were at the same weight last time, but they were both at 45. Now they've moved up to 55, which I think is a more natural weight for both of them, but specifically Poirier. I've been in the training room with Poirier a couple years ago, and I was blown away by how big he was. He was huge. I can't imagine him going down to 145. So he's much more natural at 55. He's going to have a lot more energy. So his pop is going to be able to sustain for those, hopefully 5 rounds. Whereas he's a little more a volume puncher that Conor is. Conor has that one shot, one kill kind of power, which is exhausting and terrifying. But it's just very, very interesting to watch him go at 55 and see if it changes things up for them. Right.
So with all these things to keep in mind, I mean, I think the main question is, before even going more into it, is how do I bet? I've never bet on UFC before. How do I place these bets? Joel, I feel like you're the one that's going to be able to help us figure that out.
Okay, so first of all, let's throw out a little bit of love to some of our channel partners here. I'm talking BetMGM, I'm talking PointsBet, and if you are in one of these states, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, West Virginia, New Jersey, they will match your deposit with code bonus props 20 or props HQ 20 or bonus props. So it's props HQ 20 for BetMGM, bonus props for PointsBet. So now in terms of like betting these fights, I think you want to find one meat and potatoes option in the undercards, which I will get to later. But just in terms of the main event, I think there's amazing value on Poirier just by virtue of McGregor being such a superstar. people want to bet on him, which means it's pretty smart to bet against him. So I look at these odds. I see that Poirier is plus 240, and these are athletes of the exact same age. I have reason to believe that since he's not a superstar, he's had a more focused training regime. And granted, he doesn't have the ground game that you would think to be McGregor's kryptonite here, but I think there's actually just enough variables where they score similarly that it's just smart mathematically to back Poirier here.
So I was doing some research, when I decided I wanted to get into the sports betting, and I understand what it means that he's plus 240, but could you explain for anyone watching that may not totally understand what that terminology means?
Yeah, so basically you tell your fiance you need to get the tire changed on the car, and you take that $100 and you put it on Poirier to win plus 240. So it's put down 100 to bring back 340, 240 of sheer winnings plus an irritated fiance.
Okay, so basically it's we're betting 100, and then the plus 240 means that with 100 we're going to win 240, but then it's the 140 extra, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to test out a theory off with you, Diego, actually. So this is based on like the psychology of the fighters. Last time it went pretty quickly, right? So what do you think of over 2.5 rounds? Maybe Poirier's just super cautious out of the gate. I kind of like that one.
I agree. I think it's going to go maybe to the I'm leaning more towards a longer fight. I think Dustin's going to be a little more patient. He's going to let Conor kind of lead the dance because Conor's a counter striker. He lets the opponent kind of leap in and move forward aggressively again. That's why he gets in people's heads. So Dustin is kind of putting it more on Conor to kind of lead the dance, which would make it interesting.
That's actually what I was thinking that as well, because there's so many. Conor he thinks he's going to get him out in 60 seconds, and Poirier obviously wants to bring it to the deep end. He wants to be bleeding, he wants to be in pain, but I think before really deciding on all these factors, I'm kind of also interested in what else is going on before them. Like, do you want to tell me a little bit about some of the fights that are going on before? I mean, who's in the card below him? Chandler versus Hooker, right? Didn't Poirier just beat Hooker in June?
Yeah, that was a really good fight. That was kind of one of those kind of standout islands so far of being one of the best, like, back and forth wars. Because the thing is, they're the three guys in this card, and I don't really consider Conor in this regard. They're dogs, like they'll take two to give one, which isn't necessarily a great thing, but to have it inside of you as a fighter is very, very important. But the Chandler versus Hooker fight, I think, to me, I'm more interested in that fight than I am Conor versus Dustin, because I've seen it. I don't expect to see anything new out of those two. I've seen them fight multiple times. I've seen them fight together. But anytime a leader and a champion from another organization comes to the UFC, they're rarely given an easy fight. And Hooker is anything but that. He's a really solid fighter with a granite chin who's willing to, again, take two to eat one, or to give one, pardon me. But Chandler, in my opinion, past his prime, will be interested in see if he can bring that magic he had in Bellator over to the UFC. But Hooker, is on the rise.
So I saw that Hooker, they're talking about how he has the height and reach advantage. Can you tell me a little bit more what that means from your MMA background?
Yeah, so height and reach is something that I think a lot of people that don't really know anything about fighting, well, especially reach, love to talk about. They love to make it seem like, oh, well, 76 inches is longer than 74. So obviously this person has the advantage, which is not necessarily true. The advantage is of the person who knows how to use what they have. If Chandler's great at getting inside the reach and then to help his striking, he has the advantage. But if Hooker is able to keep the fight to the outside, keep his distance, keep his jab to keep Chandler away, then it's going to be to his advantage. I think that is Ross Pearson. And Ross Pearson got knocked out by Hooker because he ended up to rush inside to try and make contact. So being able to use your reach is very useful. It's a very important skill, but just because you're longer than someone doesn't mean you have a better chance of winning.
Right. I mean, all of this really resonates with me. I feel like there are a lot of ifs and buts. If one can do this, if he can do that. So how do I decide who to bet on? How do I decide here? The odds are pretty even here with Hooker and Chandler. So Joel, Diego, I mean, how do I pick if I do think they're going to be able to use the reach to his advantage or not?
So
and then where do we go from there?
Can I actually, my answer to this question is based off of Diego's answer to one of my questions. So reading up on these fighters' backgrounds, their age, where they've been fighting recently, and like recent motivators, like key in on Hooker's recent loss to Poirier there. And I see that it's basically an even matchup. This seems a little bit too good to be true here. Should I be scared of this one, Diego?
Too good to be true in terms of betting on who?
Yeah, there's too much value on Hooker. I think he should be a steeper favorite, and I'm worried that he's not. Yeah, I think Hooker should maybe be like a 2-1. The fact that Vegas thinks this is a toss-up kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, it's because anytime, and I saw this happen when Eddie Alvarez to the UFC, where his first fight was against Donald Cerrone, and if I remember correct, they kind of were like going back and forth with the odds, and no one was really sure how to measure. Of a difficult time when fighters change organizations because their information has been based on the skill level of that organization. Yes, Chandler was the team. So it's really, really hard. Seems, I don't know, make a decision in terms of who do I think is going to win the fight. I think Hooker's going to win. I think it's going to be a long out fight with a lot of combinations that are kind of in the pocket, a lot of stationary stuff. But I think Hooker's ability to strike and then create angles is going to make it difficult for Chandler.
Yeah, so just going off that and going off the fact that if Chandler's coming from Bellator, if it's left up to the judges at all, we know which ways it's going. So every bet I make on this entire card, be it Ribas, via Poirier, I'm tying them all to Hooker. And you know what? Tying things to a Hooker, just a normal Saturday night for your boy.
So then I think that makes it a pretty good bet if Diego's correct and that he's just going to win. I mean, the odds, right? I mean, with these odds, I think it's a pretty good bet then on Hooker. And Joel, what were you saying about Ribas? You think that it's a similar?
I'm saying
they're similar odds.
I'm saying anything that I was just going to bet anyhow. I think this is actually really great value on Hooker. So if I'm just throwing out like $25 bets, which are my normal betting amounts, I'm just going to make everything a parlay. So I'm going to tie it to Hooker because that'll be a multiplier. So like a bet where I'd bet 100 to win 90 becomes betting 100 to win like 215, 220.
I see. Okay. I like that. I think that's actually something that I might put in my.
And if you are going to do a parlay like this, you don't want it to be the last match, the last fight of the night. You don't want it to be the first one. You want it to be placed like second to last. So if he does lose, your night's still not ruined. You still got like 80% of a really fun betting experience.
Wait, so for a parlay, do you not have to be correct on each one?
You do, but I'm going to have them in like 4 or 5 bets. So if I assume I go 2 and 2, the payout will be so much more that my balance will be greater than it would be otherwise.
So you're going to pick different combinations and multiple different parlays so that whichever one comes out, you'll have an advantage there.
Yeah, I'm going to do like probably 4 2-way parlays, all of them tied to Hooker.
Okay, so we like Hooker. I like Hooker. I'm definitely going to do that too because I trust you. Is there anything, notable about the Ribas Rodriguez? I found it pretty interesting. I mean, Ribas has been on a 5 straight winning streak.
Yeah.
So do you think that's making Rodriguez insecure? Do you think that, as an MMA, I know we're going to tie it all to Hooker, but if we're just talking about money line for Ribas Rodriguez, where does it stand?
I think that a fighter who's made it to the point of the UFC, when they see that kind of pressure on them, I think that most of the time will rise to the occasion. They'll see that they're fighting someone on a big win streak and see it as, oh, here's my opportunity to show the world that I'm better than this person. I just think Ribas is a little more patient than Rodriguez, and I think that it's just style-wise not a great fight for Rodriguez. I think she's gonna get taken down. I think she's gonna get held there because I think Ribas is, like I said, a very patient grappler. She doesn't seem to rush to things. If you watch the Paige Van Zandt armbar, she really marinated it. She let it kind of show itself, which, again, as a black belt, when I see that kind of stuff, it just makes me so happy because so often in MMA, the fighter lets the 5-minute window kind of take over the moment and they think they have to get the submission really quickly. But when you let the things kind of present themselves, you let the variables show themselves, the submission becomes actually quite easier. But I like Ribas as a fighter. I think she has a really good future ahead of her, but you never know. She doesn't have the greatest striking in the world. And Mariana Rodriguez, even though it's a pretty traditional Muay Thai style striking, you can catch somebody. You can keep somebody at the end of your jab. She can leg kick her to death. You never know with these types of fights. It's going to be more about how she raises to the occasion. Is she able to kind of hunker down and find it inside of her to take Ribas out and then really create a name for herself in this fight? A lot of people are watching.
So it sounds like you agree with the odds that this will go the distance.
I think it either goes the distance or Ribas is able to get a submission within the first round. But if it gets past that, I assume it's going to be all the way to the decision because Ribas doesn't have the knockout power, and I don't see Mariana necessarily finishing her with her strikes. So I would lean on unanimous decision for Ribas.
So Joel, can I ask, for a parlay or just a money line bet, for a parlay, are you just choosing the fighter that you think is going to win, or are you also betting on what round it's going to and the decision ultimately?
Yeah, by virtue of you making it a parlay and tying it to another outcome entirely, you're going to want to go a tad more conservative than you would otherwise. So in this instance, Ribas, she's like minus 350 money line. You pair that with Hooker, that's starting to be like a plus 150 payout. And I think that's really good value for the probabilities you're getting here. And I want to jump off something Diego said, because we bet not just with our heads, but with our hearts, right? And reading the background of this fight, like, I was so emotionally affected by both fighters. And like, it seems like both of them took a loss at the wrong time in their career. So I like going the distance here as the bet because I just want them both to have a great showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see that as well. I think that, this is I'm finding this very useful because it's helping me understand that, when you first think about it, I don't just have to decide who I think is going to win. And then by talking and hearing all this, we get to decide how many rounds it's going to go to and, how it's going to end. So I think that is helpful for choosing the bet in this way. Is there anything else that you think I should know about betting on, the preliminary fights?
Well, do you want to take this, Diego? I have something, but it's ridiculously stupid.
I want to hear it anyway.
Yeah, let's hear it first. I want to hear the stupid.
Okay, we got Peña, McMann.
Yeah.
We got mother versus mother in this fight. Mamma mia, that's a lot of mauling mamas. And like, this is a Disney movie. Give me maternity ring gear. I couldn't be excited for two mothers of toddlers to go at it.
That's great. I wish the kids were in the corner with her. No, that is interesting. It was kind of crazy the first time Cat Van Katzengano fought, and after the fact, everyone's like, yeah, that was the first mother to ever fight in the UFC. And it was quite like a big moment. We're like, oh my God, that is kind of crazy that we've been able to make this leap where we went from Dana White saying there's never going to be a female UFC fighter to, hey, it's a mom. That's cool. And, there's been a lot since then. I really like McMann. I think whenever we have such a high level caliber wrestler in the UFC, it's always so cool to see not only them fight, but their preparation for the fight, watching the embedded, watching her mentality, watching her warm up in the airplane. Like they're at a different level mentally. There's no other athlete in this world that is so tuned in to not only their body, but the circumstances that they're about to fight in. I'm a huge fan of her. I wish she would have had a better shot when she fought Rousey to show off her skills, because I think after that fight, no one's really been talking about her. And I understand she took a long break, but I'm a huge fan of McMann. I really want to watch her have a good showing because they're both really strong fighters. So hopefully that one's a really good one, but I'm leaning towards McMann in that fight.
I sometimes have trouble separating facts from emotions as well, because I agree. I would love to see that, and that makes me want to choose her. But sometimes when I bet on horse racing, I choose the horses by the name and the color that they're wearing.
Yeah.
And by the way, sometimes it works out. Sometimes it is just about the feeling and the emotions involved. So
yeah,
I like that. I like her. I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. But what you said.
No, please.
Sorry.
The only other fight, sorry, I was going to say that I think needs a little bit of attention and, needs a strong word, but the Brad Tavares, Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, I think is going to be one of those fights where we might be screaming or might be completely bored out of our minds. It really has a potential for being either of those. I don't see it being anywhere in the middle. I see it's either one of the most boring fights ever or a really great, like, one for history, because they're both pretty good strikers. Brad more so, and he's a lot more of a veteran in the UFC, where Antonio Carlos Jr. is coming from the Brazilian side of the UFC's organization. Had some fights, but again, way better of a grappler than Brad Tavares is. So it's one of those classic stylistic matchups that it could be this person trying to avoid this person's strength the whole time, and but they're big guys. Whenever you have guys that big and that athletic, anything can happen within a second. So I'm going to keep my eye. I'm not going to get a snack for that one. I'll say that. I'll stay in my chair for that fight.
And I do kind of feel like that's almost a rule for UFCs. Like, the bigger the guys are, the less entertaining the fight is to watch.
It can be. Either it's a quick one that's really fun, or it's this like weird long story that is meandering and almost saddening to a way to see people just be completely fatigued because they're so big.
15 minutes of grit, determination, and figuring out who has slightly more core strength.
Yeah, it really boils down to that sometimes, and it's unbearable. But on the Brad Tavares Carlos Jr. fight, I'm going to go with veteran experience. I'm going to lean to Brad Tavares. I just think he's been in there so much. He's gotten caught a couple times, a rocky career, but I think he's due for a good one this time.
All right. Well, I'm just going to blindly take your bet, so I'll be taking Tavares there. I'll just give you my login if you want.
Yeah, sounds good.
But don't forget, we're still attaching it all to Hooker.
Oh, right. Oof.
Everyone's attached to Hooker. So, what you just said is I agree. I think, obviously we like when the fights are better and longer and, they go the distance, and depending on, like you said, the large or the small, it's interesting to see they put so much work into it, and sometimes they end so quickly, which just brings me back to thinking about, the main fight and how I would love to see this go to the deep end. I want to see the suffering, but Conor thinks he's knocking him out in 60 seconds. So,
which is funny because I watched the press conference this morning, and he went both-sided. He covered his bases, which Conor does a lot, and people give him credit for calling his shots, where he's like, I'm going to win in 60 seconds, but also I might want to do all 5. It's like, well, you can't call both. You pick one, okay, and you stick to it. But he's calling both sides of the fight, which is completely ridiculous. But again, he's fantastic at this kind of stuff. So I just think it's funny that after the fact, people still refer to him as Mystic Mac, where he just kind of calls every possible outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I also saw him saying earlier in the week that he knows that Poirier wants to, bring this out as long as he can. He wants to have a real fight. And McGregor was saying, I would love to do that as well. I'd love to take it long with him, but I'm going to be hitting him really, really hard. So let's see if he can handle it. So it's also slightly contradictory because he's saying, I would love to go to the deep end with him. I'd like to take the length. However, I'm going to be hitting him really hard and, trying to knock him out right away. Can he handle it or not? I feel like it's kind of the same thing as the discussions we're having. It's if or is he going to or is he not? Is Poirier going to be able to get him to the ground or is he not? These are all the things that we have to, I guess, decide on our own when we're making the bet. Like, what do we really think is going to be able to happen based on history and based on, 68, I don't know if I'm correct, Joel, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I saw that 68% of rematches, the previous winner wins again.
Exactly. And that's one of the many signs that just points to Poirier for me in this, because you're not just saying like, how will he do in this matchup versus McGregor? It's like they last fought 6 years ago. He had an embarrassing loss tied to his record. And now we're judging him. You know what? This guy had an entire career play out. Has he learned from that experience? And I think the smart bet is to say, yeah, this absolutely elite fighter has learned that lesson.
Yeah. I think one of the things that sticks out to me the most about this fight is that since their fight, like I said earlier, they've had a very different road to get back to the fight, which is going to get more confidence out of their experience. Is Dustin going to have a better shot now because he's had a bunch of fights in a row that are really good barn burners? He learned his grit. He's sharpened his tools. He's had a lot of experience. Or is it going to be Conor, who's had a couple of UFC fights, one double title, but also had one of the biggest boxing matches of all time, was in there physically with one of the greatest of all time, which I can tell you from experience, when you spar or fight someone who is great, next time you fight someone else, it almost seems easy by comparison.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And a lot of things that I've just been thinking about are both of their previous fights. And, obviously Mike Brown was also Masvidal's coach. And, when he came out with that flying kick against Askren, like what plan do they have? What plan does Mike Brown and Poirier have for McGregor? And then how is McGregor going to come out hot? Like, is he going to come out like he did at Cerrone? And I think all those questions are the ones that have mainly been on my mind, but then it just ultimately comes down to the bet. And that's why we're all here. And, what is the right bet to make here? So we have a question here. What is the last moment I have to place a bet on any fight? And when are the books closed? And will there be any live betting going on? So I think that because, we're trying to figure out the ultimate decision here, what's the answer to that, Joel?
Okay, so to answer your question, first of all, I will say that's why I like the over in this fight, because when you really want to take control of it, like a fighter can choose to exert as much control over the tempo as they want. Like that's the beauty of an individual sport. And when is the last moment you have to place a bet? Later than you think. You think the main event's going to be on at 11:30. It's never on at 11:30. You're going to be placing your last bet at like 2:30 a.m. on Sunday.
Wait, you really have that long into it to bet?
Maybe they're working on it, and I know they've been moving it on a little bit, but it feels like these always kind of veer off schedule a ton.
Right. So you have until what? It starts?
Yeah, because you can live bet it during it. And if you see something you like during the match, they put out adjusted lines after each round. So if you're big on Poirier and you're like, oh, he doesn't have it tonight, you can pull yourself right out of it after round one. And like maybe this isn't great when you're backing an underdog like Poirier. But if I've kind of put out these hooker parlays, if Chandler comes out hot and you don't like the matchup, you hedge your way out of hooker and you avoid a little Saturday night disaster.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. So you really have to be paying attention, pulling them in placing the bets like as soon as you feel the intuition about that.
Yeah, it is hard. I'm better analyzing than I am in real time. That
Yeah.
human element that gets me, because when you hedge a bet, that's you admitting you might be wrong. That's not easy
Right.
for any man.
So what are we thinking then about rounds based on everything that we've said? Like, is he going to be able to go the distance? Is Poirier going to be able to take him the distance that he wants to? If he gets into the ground, does he then have a bigger chance than it seems? I mean, obviously he's the underdog, but Diego, it seems like you think that he's ready to go and he's ready to make this a legitimate fight.
Oh, absolutely. I'm leaning towards Poirier. I think he has a lot more fire in him right now, where Dustin has a lot of things going on in his life. It's very difficult to maintain focus when you have all of these things pulling you to the sides. Given he's done a fantastic job with all that stuff going on. But I think if Dustin's willing to make this an MMA fight, if he's willing to mix in his wrestling into his striking, that's going to change everything, because we all know, wrestling zaps power. Even if you are a kind of power puncher where Conor has that freak strength that can kind of come out at any moment, it will wean over time because of him having to use his defensive wrestling. So not only will he be able to eat up some of Conor's power, if you're making the fighter think about their wrestling, if they're making them think that shooting could be a possibility, they're less likely to throw constantly with a lot of power, because as they throw, their upper body leans forward. It makes it easier to shoot underneath them and take them down. And again, Conor does not want to be on the bottom of Poirier. Poirier is a very good grappler, a very underrated grappler, in my opinion. He has submissions in the UFC. He's able to hold people down. Conor has gotten a lot better in his grappling in the last, 6 years, but I don't think he's up to par with Poirier's top game if he's able to get him there.
And exactly that, because I don't mean to jump in here, but like at the end of the day, if McGregor wins, it helps his brand awareness. He stays in the limelight and it bolsters his legacy a little bit. This pushes Poirier into an entirely different category of fighter. And that's why my favorite bet in this whole card is the over 2.5 in this main event, because it's not the distance. It's just you're betting on these guys to get halfway there at plus money.
That's smart.
Yeah, that's
so
why.
So you're saying that the over 2.5 means you're just betting that it's going to go over 2.5 rounds?
Yeah, if it finishes round 3, you win. I don't know the rules for if it finishes at like the 2:30 mark of the third round. But
right.
If that happens, it might not be your night,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 5 rounds does seem long with these two guys, as one of the comments says. But can you bet on specifics? Like, can you bet on if kicks are going to get involved? Like, if it's going to be a KO, if it's going to be his left hook, like how specific can you get with bets in these matches?
You can do that. There are exotic and enticing prop bet options for every single variety you could want. And you know what? I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I advise against it because I don't want to have a bad night gambling because I wasn't right enough. Like a guy wins but it isn't the way I forecasted. It seems like I'd go to bed angry with that one, and I don't want that.
Yeah. Right. So as a professional, in-house expert, you're saying that's not what you would advise in terms of actually making money. But if for some reason I had intuition and I was just like, I really think he's going to come down in the second round with a left hook, I could bet on that. Yeah, and
if you want to throw a line in the water and hope for a certain outcome, great. Right. But don't make it part of your plan, because that's just closing your eyes and throwing one at the
Right. No, I totally get it. But it does make it a little bit of fun.
It makes it fun, yeah. Like just put $1,000 on a spinning heel kick as the winner. Who cares?
So I think that based on, the 68% of rematches, the winner winning, and I'm a big McGregor fan. I would like to see Poirier, give it a good fight. But I think if I was just doing a money line, I would pick McGregor, to be honest. But based on everything you guys said, I think I would get involved in some parlays.
Yeah, I think so. So here's how I'm going to throw it down. I'm going to throw down Hooker Ribas. I'm going to throw down Hooker Poirier, and then I'm going to go on the over in the main event. So those are my 3 plays, 2 parlays, and then 1 just straight up.
I really like the over for the main event. I think that's one of the strongest that I definitely want to do. And so right now we're talking about the BetMGM sportsbook line, right? Because so again, we're on the Props Network. If you like what we're saying, subscribe. Please subscribe to the YouTube. We are very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about this. I'm learning a lot, and I'm actually really excited to get into this. And I just want to make sure that I fully understand how to make these bets, and I think I do. Is there anything that, someone who's not as educated in the betting part should know that we haven't covered?
I think you just want to make sure you have the time right, with this being on Fight Island, which I'm just now learning is not my uncle's pontoon boat.
Yeah.
So you might have a time difference in this one. I know I got burned on UFC 256 and I missed the entire thing. So really, you're going to want to log on to BetMGM, use code PropsHQ20, and make your deposit well in advance, and make sure you have the time right.
Okay. And then Diego, you were saying you're for Poirier, but is that what you're going to go with if you place the bet?
If I was a betting person, I would lean on Poirier. I just think that he's grown a lot more in the last couple of years. He's had a lot of time to reflect and grow a lot. Like he's put a lot of effort in sharpening his skills. I think he just he's on the precipice of his potential of being the fighter he was born to be. And I just think this is going to be a good fight for him. I'm leaning towards him, but again, I would never say this is who I know is going to win.
Right. But you really do think that he could win this. I mean, also the lightweight championship is a pretty big open spot for either of them. That's kind of why I think McGregor is going to come in as hard as he possibly can, because I think that as badly as Poirier would want that, we know McGregor. I mean, he wants to take everything in his sight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think the champion who has lost his title coming back is always not as hungry as a person who's never really won it. Even though Dustin won an interim title, he knows it's not the title. It's a different thing for his legacy to be the actual champion. If he ever gets that opportunity, which based on what it looks like from Khabib's camp, it looks like it's going to be a possibility that belt is going to be up to grabs within the next couple months, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I do think they keep saying that they're going to try to get Khabib back, though.
Yeah, they've said that a couple times, and it's everything that.
Do you think the winner of this fight will change his mind on that?
Possibly. I think it's how they win. But I just don't think Khabib has any reason really to come back. He's made promises. He's proven everything he needs to prove. I would like it to see him not come back. You're done. You finish undefeated. You left out on a win, which is almost unheard of in MMA. Like, no one gets to leave on good terms. He left on the best terms. Undefeated champion. Just stop. There's no reason to come back.
Joel, is there a way to bet on whether or not he's going to come back?
Yeah, there absolutely is. That'll be offered after the fight, and he'll be back because the people, they want him, and that's why you bet against him, because he resonates with people, and everyone loves pretending to be Irish, and people will bet Conor McGregor without a second thought. So you got to think there's going to be advantages in being on the other side of that equation.
Sure.
And I also think Poirier overcame the odds, already being Goliath to David, because Conor McGregor is Irish, Poirier is Cajun. Conor, he doesn't have the most obnoxious fan base in this one. So amazing.
Yeah. It's a stretch. Who would have guessed?
I would not have.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been over there. I was there for St. Patrick's once, for St. Patrick's Day, and I've seen, their first matchup, 10% of tickets were sold to Ireland at MGM in Vegas. 10% of the whole arena was sold to Ireland. So that surprises me that there are fans that could be even crazier, whatever we want to call them.
And I must admit, I do have an ulterior motive in making that kind of like shit talking claim there. I just want to rile up the Cajun community. Is there anything funnier than getting death threats in a Cajun accent?
You better watch your back there, boy.
So can I ask one more question about the parlays? Let's say we did Hooker, Ribas, Poirier, and Hooker, Ribas, McGregor.
Oh.
What if I just place those two parlays, how is my winning looking?
Well, I might need to power up the calculator, but I think you'll win either way by virtue of there being so much juice on that Hooker line.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, they're both easily 2-1. And I mean, if McGregor wins, you're probably breaking even. If Poirier wins, I mean, brunch is on you Sunday morning.
Right. So that's not a bad way to go for it either.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about, these events are long. You just want to be a little bit shy about where to place your bets because these fights can end so quickly. You don't want your evening dashed in a single punch.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I feel like I know which way I'm going. Sounds like we know which way you guys are going. Is there anything, about the main event that we may have missed or that you would want to tell me, someone who's just getting into this?
Oh, man. I just hope that, let's say people that are just getting into it, but are also betting, are also kind of watching it with not just their eye in terms of making money. I hope they watch it in terms of enjoying the elite fighters expressing their art form and being able to show how good they really are, because it is really impressive to watch these kind of fights and being able to learn from them and being able to dissect for the future, because MMA is still a very young sport comparatively. So every time there's these big fights, I know as an instructor myself, I watch with the goal and intent of taking information so I can apply it and teach it to my classes. So if you are watching and you are betting, that's great. I would say maybe, watch how they're doing what they're doing. Watch the story that's being told. Watch how one person avoids a dangerous thing or implements their dangerous option. It's very, very interesting and impressive to me. And I wish people would kind of, make sure that they get some of that information in as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to just jump off that in second. Like the thing to look for in placing your bets is the key determinant is also just how the styles of the two fighters interact. So if you find that out while researching your bets, that exact information is what's really going to allow you to have a good time watching this card and really understanding the things that Diego is telling us to look for in terms of the fighters as artists, or you will.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, they're both southpaw, right? But then Poirier's been known to switch to orthodox a lot and do that quite well, which is then, does that bring out the kicks, which is what I was asking about before. And I think those are the things I am going to be looking for and very interested in. And obviously the betting makes it more interesting. But what you were just saying about both of you, watching the artists and watching just their fighting, and McGregor said something interesting that originally when it was going to be no fans, he was actually excited, which I think most athletes, they miss the energy. And he obviously feeds off of the energy as well. And he admitted that, but he said that he was excited to just show his power without distractions, without the noise, without the background. He was like, I'm looking forward to people watching me fight without anything going on around me and just to show my power. And I just found that, really interesting and motivating, and I'm excited. There aren't going to be as many fans. There are going to be a few, but I'm excited to just focus on that and watch his form.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But that also might be a function of where this fight is taking place. Like, the people watching this as fans are probably some of the worst people to ever have lived. So I wouldn't want to perform for those people either.
Yeah, it's really a curse to have fans that annoy you. Like, be supportive, but also just a pain in the ass.
Yeah, maybe you can come check out my work if you want to blow off some steam after beheading a journalist.
Well, I would like to be a fan at the next one at Fight Island, so hopefully you don't talk as harshly about me.
Yeah, I'm just saying, they're just like billionaires who made their money in oil. It's not like you're performing for the Boys and Girls Club in this one. And I will just say, to address the chat, yes, every McGregor line is automatically a square because he's so popular. This is the reason I lose money betting on LeBron James. This is the reason people fail to short Tesla stock. Perception is what determines these lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always for squares.
It's always like when you go vote, but then you're the names underneath the main thing you're looking for. You're like, I don't know these people. I'm just gonna pick a name that I vaguely recognize. It's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, if he wins, there's value there. So
sure.
There's somewhat of a value, whether or not whatever's behind it. I mean, I have basically all my questions answered. I know what I want to bet. I know I'm going to use the Bet MGM line. I'm going to keep watching Props Network to see what else they have to say about it. And let's see if we have any other questions. I think we basically covered it all. Anything else, intriguing, or I feel like we have the betting under control. If I don't, I'm going to call you. Yeah. I'm going to be up all night, like changing my mind now that I know I can do that. Okay.
And just to sum it up, here are the bets that I'm going to suggest.
Yes, please.
Okay. 2 parlays. We have Ribas tied with Hooker. We have Poirier tied with Hooker. And then we have Poirier straight up and the over in Poirier. So that's what I like. Those are my best bets. Over is where I'm going to look to put my money.
I like those bets. Those sound smart to me.
Yes, they definitely sound smart. I'm very into the over. I still can't help but thinking that McGregor's going to win, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard betting against Conor because he's done the impossible a couple times, and he's made people look stupid who shouldn't have a couple of times. So when you try to bet against someone like that, it always kind of it's difficult. It's hard to commit to it because you're like, well, who knows? He's done.
Yeah. That's why I really like the over. I think that's my favorite bet of this whole discussion for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? You're never going to go broke betting against a legend. The payout's so good for Poirier. Even if you bet against McGregor and you lose, that's not the worst loss of all time.
No, I know, because he is just that big of a name and has that big of a aura behind him. So do you guys, thank you so much for, helping me with the MMA information and the betting information. I look forward to hopefully reconvening on all of this. And do you guys want to tell me about, what you're doing, or do you want to tell anyone watching about your background before we exit?
Yeah, I'm a black belt, and probably the only one in Brooklyn comedy. I mess around with the Props Network all the time. You can catch me every weekday placing my daily NBA bets, unless I'm fired for certain comments at the end of this show.
Also, I'm a huge Lions fan, and my dad makes a lot of leather accessories. No, I have a podcast called The Little Time Podcast. You can please check that out. It's a great podcast with my best friend, Michael Brucey. I also have a depressed workout series called Nihilift, which is recently on TikTok. Nihilift, like nihilist, but lift. It's very smart and funny. But thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
I'm recently on TikTok too, so I'm going to check that out.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing how this turns out.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Bye, Joel. I miss you.
All right. See you on the other side.